I see they're at the big table. I wonder.
Stand by.
Okay, let's call the Preservation Committee, the regular meeting at Council Chambers. Today's Wednesday, September 25th, 2019. Items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. Two or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item on the agenda may be removed or related. Discussion may be delayed at any time. So let's call to order. Any initial public comment on agenda items? See no public comment. Let's move to the first item of the agenda for possible action, election of officers. Susan, how do you want to do this?
As the report notes, you're supposed to annually elect a new chair and vice chair, and any member can nominate any other member. If there's only one nomination for the position, you don't have to vote because that person gets elected if they're the only person nominated. If there's more than one person nominated, then you hold a vote.
Okay. So I want to open the floor for nominations for chairman.
Okay, I'll nominate Alan Goyak.
Does that have to be seconded or just a nomination?
I think a nomination just anybody
Okay.
can nominate. It doesn't need to be seconded.
Okay, is there any other nominations? Okay, well, shall we take a vote on it?
Actually, if there's
Yeah.
no other
No other
nominations,
nominations?
it means it's you.
I'm the chairman. Oh, thank you very much. I want to be chairman. It's a great committee, so we'll move on. Okay, let's have nominations for the vice chairman of the committee.
I nominate Linda.
And any other nominations for vice chairman? Okay, so we have our vice chairman is Linda. Thank you. Okay, for possible action, approval of the minutes of the August 28, 2019 regular meeting. I'm quite thrilled because we're all here in person live. Yeah,
In a while.
on camera. So you see the whole thing. Right, yeah.
I don't think it's live streamed tonight, though. They don't have the equipment for that.
Oh,
You get
no
to
live
see
stream tonight?
yourselves, but it'll be viewable
Yeah.
later once they can put it online.
I find it very helpful. I did find out there's a bit of a delay when you're watching it live stream than when you're actually at the meeting, but it's very good. But I also find it very helpful after the meeting on YouTube to review what was being said at the meeting. It's actually very helpful for even the committee members, not only the public. Okay. For possible action, presentation of the...
You didn't, nobody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You still need to take action on item 2.
Item number 2, are any changes to the minutes?
I don't know whether there's a change, I have a comment. The minutes of the last meeting state the member Davenport suggested looking at the city strategies and historic preservation goals at each meeting. My understanding from that was that would be an ongoing agenda item for future meetings. And I note that it's not an agenda item on our meeting tonight. So I don't know whether I just misunderstood or whether it just somehow didn't get done, but I would hope that we put, because I think we should be talking about the goals every single meeting we have until all the goals are completed or discarded or whatever. So I don't know whether I'm just misunderstanding what the intention of that was or what. But I don't know that it's a correction to the minutes, but it's
Yeah, something that we need to consider.
Yeah,
as
maybe
we
I can
talk
help.
about that.
Matter of fact, I did speak to Michael Mays about that specific item. You know, like what should we be discussing some of the future goals and everything. And one of the things is that our goals were presented and accepted by the council yesterday at yesterday's city council meeting. I know.
That's
I think
why.
some of you have. And when I did ask, and I talked to Michael Mays today, and he had mentioned that yes, he wants really make that a major part of next month's meeting when he can get he's going to asking us some question, how the committee would like to proceed, and he's kind of spearheading that whole conversation about the future goals. And so I don't think it's been ignored. I think it's just been kind of postponed for the next meeting. It'll be we'll make sure it's a standard agenda item, because I think, part of those goals are integral with our
Well,
committee.
that's what I'm asking. I was like, going forward, to have that as a sort of a standard item on
Right.
each agenda, the discussion of the goals. I don't know how to word it, Susan, you can, whatever,
Well,
but.
basically, if just simply one member throws out a suggestion and the rest of the members don't say anything else, we can't necessarily take that one member's comment as a directive for the entire committee.
Can I make a motion? Is this a time to make a motion?
No, it's not.
Well, exactly, so
Right.
I'm just pointing that out, but in some time, I want to make a motion, and then.
I think, as Alan just pointed out, it's going to be the whole topic of your priorities, and, future action is going to be back on the agenda next month. You can deal with it
All
then.
right, good.
Right now, you just need to,
All right,
your action
fine.
is regarding the minutes.
That's fine.
Okay. Any other
Wait, can I
change?
just clarify that it wasn't just a comment I made, it was a comment, however, we did vote on it, and we all agreed that that comment was included, I'm thinking? Because that comment was in the priorities, and we agreed that those priorities would move forward, but I think there's a delay
Right.
because we went before the city council
Yeah.
last night, so.
Right.
That's what it sounds like.
I apologize because it wasn't on the agenda, so it's not in this agenda packet, but are you saying that the topic of discussing the strategic plan was actually in your list?
Correct.
Oh, as a monthly item, it's in that list. Okay,
Correct.
then I apologize then. Yes, relative to that, that is what the committee approved.
Okay.
Like I said, I apologize because if comments were made separately from the document, then it might not have been clear what was in the document and what was brought up separately, so.
Any other comments on the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes with changes?
I'll make the
Are there changes with, no?
Replace them on
No.
file.
Okay.
Replace them on file.
Well, as the minutes as are, have a motion?
Well, I can make a motion that.
Charlie?
I can make a motion that you can place them on file.
Who's the second? Charlie gonna do a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay, for possible action, presentation by the Bureau of Reclamation about proposed installation of updated irrigation system at 1200 Park Street. And we have our guest from Reclamation, I think with a new haircut. Looks like.
Yeah, I got a haircut. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah.
But I'm Nathaniel Gee. I'm the regional engineer for the Bureau of Reclamation. And we are, I think we've brought up before that we are moving forward with this project. It's mostly an update to the irrigation system. That's the real driver, is we've had a lot of maintenance issues in our irrigation system. It's old and needs to be updated. But part of doing that means that we will be essentially removing all the irrigation, all the landscaping, placing the irrigation, and then replacing it. And we want to make sure that we coordinate closely with this committee as that project goes forward, both so that you're aware of it and also so that we can get input. You can see we included the 30% design plans, or a portion of them. It's not the full design plans, but a portion for you to look at in your packet. And I think, yeah, here's some of the drawings. This is actually the demolition plan, and you'll see that they will be removing most of the landscaping. We're trying to save the mature trees where possible, and there'll be some regrading of some of the areas, particularly, you can leave it on that first one, but some of the areas that we're looking at is more, yeah, the first one is fine. So you can see that where it goes along Nevada Way, there'll be some regrading. Also, actually on Park Street, where it gets closer to Nevada Way, it's quite steep. We're looking at, you don't see it as clearly here, but in the 60%, we might try to regrade some of that. You'll maintain the hill, but the concern is it's so steep that we can't drive a riding lawnmower on it right now. We'd like to be able to if possible. The one concern there is we may lose some of the more mature juniper trees on the top. We're trying to see if we can save the mock orange tree that's closest to Park Street. You can see you can go to the next one. This is the demo landscaping plan. You can see some of the things that we're removing. Like I said, you can see that we're trying to maintain those mature trees where possible. And then the next two are really the ones that show kind of the new plan. Not only are we trying to improve the landscaping, the irrigation system, not so much landscaping, but you can see there that we want to improve accessibility. We're planning to add a sidewalk along the Nevada Way side. Currently, there is no sidewalk. We've had issues with employees who have wheelchairs, and when they want to go to lunch in town, they end up in the road in Nevada Way coming through, and obviously that's a safety concern as well as an accessibility concern. So we're adding sidewalk there, as well as you can see the 30% design calls for a ramp that would take people. It's a long ramp. If you see where it goes up Nevada Way, then it turns down Denver Street, and the ramp would go, it's very long, and then bring them to the front of the building. We are looking at several options with that ramp. We're looking at either there, or we might put the ramp into the back. The problem with bringing the ramp to the front, it was noticed as part of this 30% design review, was that there's no accessibility on the front door. And we don't believe there's a desire to add a ramp to the front because of the change to the visual of the front, but we do have accessibility in the back of the building. So we might actually move that long ramp to make it a switchback ramp to the back. We're looking at both options currently. But you can also see there that we're planning on adding quite a bit. The lawn will remain pretty much as is, with the exception of right now the roll curb is kind of wavy. We're straightening it out purely for a maintenance purposes. And it'll be basically the same line between lawn and xeriscape as is now, except it'll be straight instead of waved. You'll also see that we're adding quite a bit of plants in the xeriscape area. If you go up there now, the xeriscape area is very sparse, I guess would be the right way to put it. This will be, there'll be a lot more bushes in the xeriscape. Part of the reason is to try to get more of a historical look, because they had a lot of bushes up front. You can see the plants that are currently showing on the 30%. We're actually doing a review with our landscape architect in the next, I think it's 2 weeks from now, where we're sitting down and going over historical photos to see if we can incorporate more historical bushes. What we found, it's very hard to pinpoint which bushes were up there at which time because it changed so much, and some of them died off very quickly. And our landscape architect, when we say, hey, we really like that one, she said there's a reason that was only in one photo. It didn't survive. So we're trying to find some things that would be more historical, but you can see even with what they have now with some of them are like lantanas, which are that yellow flower you see around. There's a lot of rosemary, as well as there's a small green bush that will give a greener look when you look at the xeriscape. But that's, and you can flip to the next one, or is that the last one? You can see it just splits the landscaping into two sides. The xeriscape that sits on the opposite side of Park Street away from Nevada Way would remain pretty much as is today. We're really not updating that section. So I don't know if you guys, and I'm answer any questions or input from the committee as time goes on. We're happy to hear, particularly if, I know Alan's looked quite a bit at what plants there were and trying to figuring it out. And we've struggled with trying to find out, particularly on the small plants, which ones were there originally and which ones would survive. But we're trying to go through that process right now.
You know, one of the things, especially those larger ones, like the mock orange and I think the cypress, I think they may be, just because of their size, they may be definitely candidates for some of Wilbur's original trees and things. I've just obtained a book, somebody's going to get a copy of 150 booklets that were produced by Damon Olerking, who was working with Wilbur Weed, and was supposed to give me this, and it's basically a planning schedule for Boulder City.
Oh, great.
Make sure I will get it to you. I'm supposed to.
Yeah, if we could
supply
get
of those.
that, then we can get it to our landscape architect. That would be
Damon
beneficial.
Olerking. He was the city forester here, and he had compiled a book, and
When is it in print?
I'm not thinking. I think it's in the it's early 2000s, but you know, someone just
It's not too far away. I mean, that's not that long.
yeah. So, but he was, you know, incorporating a lot of the same plants that Wilbur Weed was, especially with the deciduous trees. But I'll make sure to get you. When do you plan to start this project?
So this is a 30% design. We just did a value engineering study, and the comments of that will go to the design engineer. The timeline is we would not be actually going into construction until late 2020, early 21. So the plan would be to award the contract probably October of 2020. And so that's the beginning of our fiscal year, or so it'd actually be our fiscal year 2021. And depending on the contractor and when planting season is best and what exactly we do, it'll either be right after that they'll do the construction through the winter and plant in the spring, or if for any reason we end up being delayed, it would push it into the fall, just because again we aren't going to plant during the summer. So that's kind of the current timeline, and we will be doing after the 60%. We are working on holding a public meeting.
No, I think so. People are going to get pretty excited when they see the lawns start coming up. And but you'll be here. You have a lawn for Historic Preservation Day in May, then.
Yes, we will.
There's no
And
danger in that.
And part of our hope is that we can try to get out the information as much as possible before we actually rip out the grass for construction. Obviously, we don't want to alarm too many people. Hopefully people will know that we're putting it back
Right.
when it starts to come out.
So I have two questions. Have you shared the 30% with the SHPO at this time, or will you wait until you get the historic images and a planning plan based on?
So usually it's at the
that imagery?
60% that we do the consultation with the SHPO, and that's when we will do it with this, that we'll go into consultation.
And do you foresee sharing the 60% with us, which will also show where are the historic images or historic photos?
So our original plan was to do a 90% review with this committee, but we could do a 60% if you guys would like to see it. That was no problem.
I would, especially if it includes the historic images, or if the booklet you have somehow influences your planting plan and design.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And I'm going to make sure that the committee gets a copy. Each one of the committee has a copy of it.
And I think we do, I know that obviously in this meeting you can only do so much, but if you know something like Alan on that booklet or anything else, feel free to reach out to us. We want input on that planting.
Yeah, I noticed that Dennis McBride on Facebook has just posted some interesting pictures of the area along Reclamation, and maybe that could be some help for you too.
Yeah, and we do have a lot of photos. Like I said, part of it is a lot of time when they're not dated. We have a hard time knowing exactly when they were. And there were so many different plantings. We're starting to believe, after we've gone through these photos, that it may have been used as a nursery early on. So that, because there would be rows and rows of small trees or shrubs, and then they'd be gone, and there'd be other rows. So we think they may have been growing them up in plant and then pulling them out and taking them elsewhere throughout the town, but we don't know for sure. So.
Well, fantastic. Any other comments?
All right.
Like I said, thank you for sharing this. We really appreciate you guys taking the time and sharing this information with us. This is important.
No problem. Thanks so much.
I want to make one comment, and this comment comes from something that happened at City Council last night, which sort of upset me. But I think it needs to be clearly understood that the Historic Preservation Committee is not approving or disapproving of the landscape modification by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Now, I think it's a beautiful job. I think that's great, but I don't want to come back 6 months from now and say, oh, well, the Historic Preservation Committee said it was okay if you put pine trees up in the middle of the, I don't think that's what we are doing. We're listening to what you have to say, and I think it's a great job you're doing. But there is no, the committee as an official, well, an official designation or an official opinion doesn't have any opinion that is binding to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, So you guys have at it, and I think it's beautiful what you're doing. But we got chastised last night, and I don't intend to ever get chastised like that again. So.
Can I say, however, I'm assuming that because you are consulting with the SHPO, this is a Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act action, and part of Section 106 states that federal agencies are to reach out and consult with stakeholders and partners, and that's what we are. And so our comments will go into the record.
And we will definitely be putting in our consultation with the SHPO that we presented it to the Historic Preservation Committee. Just like all the other outreach we do, we'll put what public meetings we'll be having. We've reached out to several of the neighbors directly that are adjacent to the building. We include that to the SHPO, basically saying what consultations have we done with the community and stakeholders. And so that does go into our, SHPO consultation, but we do not say, they gave us their seal of approval.
I understand that, and I appreciate it, and I thank you very much for coming. I think it's great what you're doing. I just don't want to have my butt chewed again by somebody down the road for saying it was this or that. I think it's great what you're doing.
All right, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 4, for possible action, discussion of activities for Historic Preservation Day 2020 and the Historic Preservation Award for 2020. And as I mentioned last meeting, I've asked artist Gary Winter to kind of come here, and he's going to show us some examples of what we're talking about for the awards, possible awards for these little drawings and architectural models. And also we had talked about the perhaps a coloring book, with homes, and he's going to bring some examples over here. But I think before we do that, should we be establishing the date of our event right now?
It's entirely up to you.
Okay, I mean, I think that the date, the weekend we usually have it is on May, the weekend of Mother's Day. This year, I think it falls on May 10th, is what I believe. Is that the date that we're going to shoot for again? Realizing that whole time is,
Well, it would be May 9th.
I'm sorry, May 9th. Mother's Day is the 10th.
Oh, yeah, okay, so it is again on May 9th?
You choose.
We have to choose, right?
Oh, okay.
Because just around those dates, I think the week after is generally
Art in the Park or one of those?
no, not Art in the Park. It's Spring Jam.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Spring Jam. Yeah. It's usually pretty booked. Every weekend is, if we've gone,
Yeah, that's,
except for Mother's Day weekend, which we've staked out as our territory. And so anybody,
I think that's fine.
can move? Okay, shall we make it as a motion? For, somebody want to make a motion about the date?
I'll make a motion to designate May 9th as Historic Preservation Day.
Okay, have a
I'll
second?
that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so it's May 9th. Anyway, Gary, why don't you show us what you got here and kind of,
Well, I brought a couple of little buildings up. One's a home and the other's a business. I'm from Pleasanton, California, and I have done the whole town in miniature like this. And every year, they would commission me to do 4 historical homes in town. And they would give them to the homeowners that refurbished the house. So they would give out 4 to 5 different homes every year and a plaque. And I do the little homes like that. And then, I'll have to come up there, but I do a rendering first. So this is the drawing first. And then, so you get the rendering and then the building. Once I do the rendering, I can do 2 or 3 buildings, or 4 or 5 or 6.
Gary,
Any size.
excuse me, procedural point here. Could you please hold those up to be seen by the camera? And then secondly, could you, when you get home later, whenever that is, whatever day, and email us PDFs of those? Because for a public meeting, what you're showing to the committee has to be on record for the public.
I live right around the corner, I'll be home.
Oh, okay. So you're no longer in Pleasanton then?
oh yeah,
This is,
he lives in the historic district.
I live right across the street from this building.
Okay.
That's why I did it. I look out the window, I think. But that's the rendering, and then I'll make a miniature of it. And then, and two, you could sell it. That's what.
Sir, if you stand at the podium and hold them right in front of you, I could zoom in on them.
Yeah, go to the podium and she'll zoom in on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just hold them in front of
oh,
you.
you're the guy that's doing the.
I'm the guy.
It's a girl, yeah.
Whoa, let's do it.
Where do I?
Just right where you're at.
Right where you're
Hold
at.
them in front of you. Okay,
Okay.
We have major technology here.
hold on.
Cameras up there.
All right.
Maybe we should give them the models too.
There's a local building,
Go.
and here's a home,
Very cool.
120 years old, in Pleasanton. Anyway.
Anything else?
And the cost of this about $250 a piece?
It runs about $260 for the set,
Yeah.
for the rendering and the building, and then if you want extra buildings, they're $35
Okay.
per.
For the same, yeah.
And I have done the whole Main Street in my town in Pleasanton, California, and I've been doing them for 30 years. But there's 800 collectors that collect their town. And it's a cute little town, was a cute little town like we are here now. But there's 80,000 people in town now. Anyway.
Okay, so that, basically for our budgeting purposes, we're talking about 260 each or twice, right? So we're talking about giving that to the homeowners. And then we'd have a rendering that we could reproduce here.
Yeah.
As far as our collateral material, which would be nice.
Well, I guess I would have to ask Mr. Winter, if you do one rendering and one wooden model, Mr. Goya just mentioned being able to reproduce the rendering for our purposes. Is there a copyright, or?
Yeah, but I'd give you the copyright.
Okay,
You
so
know.
the city would be able to reproduce the
Oh, yeah,
renderings?
yeah. You can
Okay.
make postcards and posters and a book.
Okay.
In fact, I've done a whole coloring book for my town, which could be easily done here. But and it's because that's kind of the main building in town right there, Colin Hardware. But it's all black and white, and then the kids can color it in. But I can show you that some other time. But
Oh, if you have the coloring books, we'd love to see them right now.
I forgot the coloring book.
Oh, okay.
It's at home.
I do have one question, just for my clarification. So 206, so if we nominate and choose someone for the plaque or the Historic Preservation Day Award, it would be $260 for you to,
For the rendering and the building.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can give them the building.
So do we include the plaque as well then, which is another whatever it is? I don't know what it is. Susan probably knows.
$55, I think I read.
No, the plaque's more like 130, 140.
Was it a brass plaque?
It is.
Thing?
Yeah.
'Cause that's
We're
what
talking 400.
It's actually bronze, I believe.
Bronze, right, yeah.
So we're talking $400 plus or minus then for, I'm just asking.
Per year.
Yeah, so.
In recognition for, well, what we did back home, but it was in recognition for refurbishing these homes. And
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it said that if we're gonna do this,
Turn
we
your
have
mic on,
to put it.
please.
Oh. If we're gonna do this, it has to go into the budget for next year. Cause we only have so much left. We have $1,167 left.
that'll cover it.
No,
That's for the,
that's what has been spent over the years.
Oh, okay.
There's only a few $100s left of that original 1,500 that was unofficially budgeted for this.
okay, yeah, okay. The cost for the 9 award plaques to date is $1,167. So this other, the 260 is gonna have to be put into the new budget, according to Mr. Mays. So, do we have to make a motion then, like to put it into the budget?
You can't, you can make a request.
Okay.
You can make a motion to request, which I believe actually, I thought you previously made a motion that you recommended that there be 2 awards each year.
Yeah,
But at that point, the only thing official approved was, the plaque. And basically what Director May said, that if you're only talking about a plaque for spring 2020, we can fund the cost of the second plaque out of the current budget. But if you're wanting to be adding these additional features, and especially if you're going to 2 awards a year, as noted in here, that would bump the cost up to closer to $800 a year. So that will have to be budgeted for in the next fiscal year, which means no, you couldn't do those things for spring of 2020. It'd be in the fiscal year starting July 2020, which would
Right.
allow you to do it for May 2021.
right. So if we have the go-ahead tonight, then it will go into, it'll go into the budget for 2021.
Okay, no, please.
No?
You're not,
Okay, yeah,
you're not
well,
stating
thank
that
you,
correctly.
thank you. I
can't-
appreciate your clarification.
You cannot approve any changes to the budget. All
Okay.
you can do is make requests.
Okay,
Per what Michael Mays said previously, what's noted in the packet, if you simply want for spring of 2020, a second bronze plaque,
That's fine.
You've basically already voted for that. You want, you've indicated you want 2 awards. Michael has indicated we can do 2 plaques for next spring.
Okay.
But that's it in terms of the budget. Going
Yeah.
beyond that for the models, the renderings,
Mm-hmm.
and plus 2 awards a year, you may make a request to this, that it be added into the fiscal year 2020-21 budget, so that it would be available for spring of 2021. So that's what you can make a motion to recommend, if you'd like.
Do we have to specifically ask that we put in the budget, or can we see if there's any funds that could be used for this purpose?
You can word your motion however you like, you just obviously can't make a motion to amend the budget or to
Right.
formally
I know what-
demand that the city spend funds.
Right.
You can make whatever requests you like.
Request that if I'd love to at least see how, at least for this year, to see what the response is to this. Just request from the city council, and then if we can find the money, great. If we can't, we'll just go with the 2 plaques.
well, it looks like we'll have to go with the 2 plaques for 20,
Well,
Wait a minute. First of all, we haven't decided that there's going to be 2 plaques.
well,
We have decided that maybe we will consider having 2 plaques, but we haven't decided that there's going to be 2 plaques.
Well, formally, what you asked for at a prior meeting was that you voted that you want 2 awards.
2 awards.
Right.
And
I
so
think
far,
well, my understanding
Yeah.
was that we voted that we would have 2 awards if we agreed that there were 2 buildings or whatever that were worthy but we didn't say that we will have to give 2 awards.
No, but it's available. 2 awards are available.
It's available.
Depending on what happens with the, all of the applications.
Right, exactly,
Right.
but we aren't committing ourselves to 2 plaques or awards or whatever. We're
Well, we
committing ourselves to evaluate 2 different categories of award.
Well, we did expand it to residential and non-residential.
Exactly,
So
to
there's
consider residential and non-residential, right?
Exactly.
But we didn't commit ourselves to saying that we have to choose one from each
No, because we
category.
may not even get any
We
applications.
might not have any, I don't know.
Yeah, so, but we have 2.
I just want to clarify that. I mean, we aren't committing ourselves to
Yeah.
awards.
Well, there's
Committing
enough
ourselves
money.
to consider.
Yeah. There's enough money in the budget right now to do the 2, if in fact we have 2. But for the following year, we do need to put a request in, a motion, because otherwise it'll get lost. You know, if we don't make a request now, it may not get put into the new budget.
Can I ask a question as far as the Historic Preservation Award and Day budget? Is that combined or?
you mean for activities for the day? No, we don't really have a budget for that. Pretty much the expenses for that to date have been nominal. I mean, mostly staff is volunteering their time and we can, reproduce paper copies and we make our posters in-house and, we get the newspaper to do, an article for it. I mean, there's very little cash outlay. In the past, committee members have been pretty good about getting local businesses to donate refreshments, although, as I've mentioned in the past, the clerk's office has said that, up to a couple $100 normally could be spent towards refreshments and things like that for activities. And the actual cash outlay for HP Day expenses has been nominal, if anything. So that's not a concern. Really, the only cost we're truly looking at is whatever you want to do for the awards, because, I do have to order a plaque in advance, usually by a couple of, at least a few months. And if you want to go to this, any of these options with Mr. Winter, we do need to budget for that. The other thing, as I brought up in the staff report, is depending on how you want to go with this, and depending on your timing and depending on whether or not you want the actual award to be presented at a city council meeting prior to Historic Preservation Day, that kind of backs up your schedule big time, because that's why I often mention to you is like, gee, if that's what you want, the actual presentation of the award prior to HP Day, that means you're starting to basically advertise for nominations like, December or January or so, to give the public a couple months to respond, because then you have to choose it at a meeting and then create the certificate with the award language. It's all of these steps. And I order the plaque in advance with a year on it. But as Mr. Hans has pointed out, in order not to box yourself in to having to present 2 awards each year, if you don't feel that there have been adequate qualified nominations made, then you may want to consider having the award plaque not list a year on it, because obviously there's no sense in the city wasting money on 2 plaques that say 2020 if you're only going to give out 1 award. We've just thrown $140 away. The alternative is just having the plaque not mention the year, and that way then if we order 2 and you only give away 1, the other plaque can be used the next year, And I gather from what Mr. Winter indicated previously, I think you said that you could do your renderings and do the wood model within a few weeks?
3 weeks.
Okay. So for that instance, if you want to present it in advance of HP Day, then you're definitely choosing that awardee a couple of months in advance for that to be able to do that. The alternative is basically not presenting the plaque and the model and the rendering until after HP Day. It depends on how early you want to be making those decisions. And then we have to back up all the advertising for public input, from that.
Going
Susan?
back to the,
Sorry.
going back to the budget for Historic Preservation Day, I wonder if those discretionary funds could be utilized for purchasing. Perhaps this year we just do the rendering, and then the following year we do the rendering and the wood model.
That's a bit of a policy change.
Which policy?
The policy from the clerk's office in terms of using nominal funds for refreshments for a committee event and changing that to actually be, okay, we now want to turn that into a tangible award to give to a member of the public. That's a bit of a policy change. Refreshments that serve the entire community that come to an event is different than spending the money to give to a person. So we can certainly look into that to see if that's an option. But basically, I think the chairman perhaps phrased it the best way, is to examine possibilities for other sources of funding or other avenues for funding, depending on what exactly you want to do for 2020.
Right, that's what I was proposing, is to basically just ask for the money, don't even budget this. Is there other discretionary funds that could be used? I mean, there's always a possibility, if that's not possible, that we could, fundraise or, get a sponsor for the awards, or there's other things we could do possibly to make it happen.
That's what I wanted to ask, Susan. If one of the sponsors of Historic Preservation Day provided it,
Provided what?
the sculpture.
And the rendering?
Everything.
I will certainly pass the question along. I don't know. I mean, it's a city award, and there just may be procedures that have to be done
Yeah.
to enable that. I will pass that on.
I have another thing I'm going to throw out here, which is probably not going to go very far, but if we award a plaque to either or both a business and a resident, and recommend, I don't know how to say this exactly, that Mr. Winter would be happy to present you with a rendering and a model, and that would be up to the people that won the award, whether or not they wanted to spend the $240 for these beautiful renderings, which I would. I mean, if I won an award for my house being I wouldn't mind spending $240 to give it directly to Mr. Winters and it'd be between me and him. I might even give him $250.
What's actually charging us $260.
Well, or whatever, but it's not coming from the committee. I mean, our function is the plaque, and if
The plaque but when I've done these before, back at home, the building and the rendering, most of the people want the little building, but that was given to the couple that owned the home. It was an award for beautifying and refurbishing the building. And as every year went by, the different people out there that had and been working on their homes and stuff were looking forward to see if they could, if they were nominated to win or whatever. So it's, and then there was always other people that would.
well, no, I agree with that. I'm just saying I don't know that the committee necessarily has to fund that. I mean, if I were lucky enough to have won the plaque, I would be more than delighted to go to you and say, "Geez, Mr. Winter, I would love to I'll give you $500 if you make this thing for me, And my mantle and my next door neighbor was interested,
Right.
maybe they would do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there because it seems to me that at least in the initial stages here, it's going to be difficult for us to come up with a way to fund this.
Nah, you figure it out.
Well, we can't.
And it's a great incentive, you know, for.
I mean, I think we're trying to create excitement. I mean, there's a marketing problem with it. I mean, if one is like, you can't do it kind of unofficially, and by the way, you can also get a painting done of your house with this person or that person.
Well, maybe not.
But I think a part of it is trying to create some excitement over the award is what we're trying to create, you know.
Whatever.
But I think if we phrase it so that we're looking for maybe some funds that may be out there, and not ask for it as a budget item, but just ask, you know, this, and we're looking at about $800 for awards of this, you know, something that we could ask the council for.
That would be,
Or
in-
the staff, even the staff level, then we have to go to council.
And I would suggest that it does benefit the Historic Preservation Committee and the city, because as we mentioned, we're going to get a copy of this for our use for promoting Historic Preservation Day and Historic Preservation as
How
a
about if I
whole.
just say, well, never mind?
And just as far as cost, just to let you know that Mr. Winters, most of his time is in making the rendering. The cutout, the model itself is
simple.
relatively simple compared to because the drawing is a hand-drawn, you know, rendering of the home. So we don't save much money by just having, let's say, just the drawing and then the cutout. If the cutout is just $35, really. You know.
Or I could do it in nails. No, I wouldn't.
You could do the nail, yeah. That's another subject.
I do a sculpture using
Yeah,
nails.
Nails, yeah.
And it's hard to explain, but I've done some for President Reagan, 2 for President Reagan, 1 for President Carter, Clint Eastwood, and it's like that plaque up there, but it's all nails. It's really cool. So anyway,
Actually, I have seen those and they're beautiful,
oh, thank you.
but I don't think we want to go there.
Okay, so basically then, we're down to maybe a sponsor for this year?
Well, we're
But
not-
we have to find out if it's okay, right, from the city? If that's,
Well, there may just be a timing issue here. I mean, why don't you resolve, do you want to make a motion? Why don't you first make your motion about what you do want for fiscal year 2021 and going forward?
okay.
You know, because I think you know what you want, at least for the next fiscal year going forward. So why don't you make and pass a motion with that recommendation? Then we'll back up and talk about spring of next year, current
Okay.
budget year.
So we want to put a motion out there on.
Is there a-
On
I think we should ask for $50,000.
Is there
I'll do the
another
whole
amount
town
we
now.
want to ask for, Alan? Like a specific amount that we want to ask for?
Let's call it $1,000.
$1,000?
Well, you don't even have to
Okay,
get,
this is
I don't
260.
suggest you get specific, I don't suggest you get specific about dollars.
Right, just
I think you should be
budgeting.
specific about what it is you want for the future budget years.
Right.
Like, do you want a bronze plaque plus funding for an artist rendering by Gary Winter and
Right.
model for up to 2 awards each year?
Right.
If that's what you want, then basically that's the draft $780 or so.
Right.
And we know costs can fluctuate, and,
Okay.
but like I said, you don't have to specify the dollar amount, just specify what you'd like, at least for the following budget years going forward.
What Susan said.
Well, we can make a motion.
Go ahead, Linda.
Okay. I make a motion that that we ask for a bronze plaque, an artist rendering, and an artist wooden structure for the future, starting in 2021. And we want to make a request for those things. Is that it?
For 2 awards
2
per
awards.
year?
2 awards per year, yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. So the second
Okay, so
motion.
now, apparently what you're trying to do is to be able to get one of these, well, the question is one or more of the renderings of the models for spring of next year when it is not budgeted for.
Right.
And I guess, I guess first, perhaps consider this. Don't think about the money just yet or the approval. Think about the timing.
Right.
I mean, how do you want, is it your goal that if you've got, since you voted that May 9th will be HP Day, since the council normally does a formal announcement of HP Day at the prior council meeting, which would be on April 28th, is that when you want the award to be presented as it traditionally has been in the past? And if so, do you want that bronze plaque and the model and the rendering all ready for presentation at that council meeting? Or are you okay with just presenting the bronze plaque and telling the awardee that, you know, they'll be getting those items later? Because if you want the actual rendering and the model ready for April 28th council meeting, that's, you know, you need to be deciding that now, you know, so that we can start building the schedule for how fast, you know, we're going to be sending this out to the public for nominations, because now we have to build an extra time in there for Mr. Winter's work. Because basically, the way I see it, you'd probably need to be choosing the awardee in February, so that that order could be placed, and then approving the certificate in March for the April council meeting. So if you're going to be choosing the awardee in February, that means you probably want to start be advertising to the public for nominations in December, and you typically don't meet in December, although I think, my recollection, I think for Thanksgiving this year is that in lieu of having a meeting on the fourth Wednesday of November, you have a meeting, I think, on the first Wednesday of December.
December, right.
So you need to be, you know, approving the advertising and moving forward by then. I mean, is that your goal? Do you want everything presented in April by the council?
Well, I think it should be, because it's such a beautiful thing to have an artist rendering. I think, you know, we're proud of this, so we want the public to see it.
Well, I think this is the schedule we went on last year, basically, right? I mean, we accelerated the schedule last year, and my input was that there was a lot of people that, I mean, I had a lot of input that people were excited about. We had more submittals than we've ever had before last year, and you know, I think the quicker we start this thing up, the better that's in people's mind, because I think after the fact it has less newsworthiness, you know, and especially I think something like that with Mr. Winters is proposing, it's a lot more visual, and maybe we can get the newspaper to handle a little bit differently, you know, just because it's colorful, visual, and, you know, reproducible.
So then it would have to be in the mailer in December, Susan?
Well, I'll have to start.
See.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're right, getting the utility mailer, I have to book that a couple months in advance, so.
So why are we picking the winner in February rather than March?
Because if it's going to, because that's leaving you almost, you know, a very little time then for Mr. Winter to actually have the rendering and a model available. And for one thing, we have to have those items ready for the city council about 3 weeks in advance, and that includes exhibits. So
that's a month in advance.
pretty much,
Yeah,
So
we have to get council reports and backup to the city manager a month in advance of a council meeting.
So if we choose the 17th of March, because it's the third.
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's
Thank you.
So if we choose the winner on the 17th, he has
Well, you meet on
more
the
than a
fourth
month.
Wednesday.
Right. Oh, the 4th, so the 24th, sorry.
Instead of the 17th?
Instead of the 17th, the 24th.
Okay, 24th, okay.
Then he has a month.
Yeah, to work on
Complete.
everything.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll admit as a planner, and from my standpoint, you don't normally want to cut your timeline too short. If Mr. Winter ends up becoming ill or incapacitated, if you've given yourself a 2-month buffer,
But then
you're
that's
more
okay,
safe.
I think, then,
Yeah, I agree with you, Susan. We should make sure that we have enough time.
well, if is on time, then it's a bonus. If it isn't on time, I don't know,
It's up to you. You'll be cutting it rather close.
Yeah. Well, we'd have to put it into the mailer right? Okay, and then that gives them 2 months to make application. February, we choose. Then March, we actually have narrowed it down.
No, March,
Okay.
we're not doing anything in March. That's why I don't understand why March is out. I mean,
So we choose in February?
that's what she's suggesting. I think we should choose in March. And that gives a month for Mr. Winter and the city to purchase, well, you probably will purchase those plaques without the dates, which I think is a great idea.
I'll back up a little bit at this point since Michael's not here. He wanted me to reiterate what he has told you before. The only thing we can guarantee you at this point is the bronze plaque. You can just simply make a request. No guarantee this is going to happen.
Right.
We can make
Well, to me, it's, I have faith in Gary can pull up, main thing is, I think the city council, we want to have their certificate done. And I think the second thing is maybe the rendering done would be, I don't think even the bronze plaque is as important at that April meet, or that, almost the bronze plaque can be given afterwards, because it's not as impressive as I think as the rendering and the certificate is. Be photographed. So both Gary and I are on a timeline. I've had a near-death experience. I just want to get things done.
Okay, well, it'll have to be February or March.
What did we do last year? Did we choose the winner in February? I don't remember.
I'll have to pull up last year's packet. I'm sorry, I'm not able to do that right here. But I can check into that.
Okay, so we don't have to tell you until next month,
Well,
the timeline?
let me back up a bit. To
Okay.
answer Blair's question, I think last year, I think you did choose the awardee in March prior to the April council meeting, because I already had the plaque ordered and received by then. And the only thing that was the timeline then was that in terms of the drafting of the certificate language, you had to do that basically without approval from the committee, because there was not
Right.
time to get it back to the committee. Now you're talking about adding, and obviously a whole new piece within that last month, getting the Winter to, to do that work. He may not mind, and hopefully there will be no snafus regarding that. It's up to you at this point. Of course, I know in Michael's opinion, he was pretty clear that it would not be funded for this current year. You're welcome to ask for whatever you like. Obviously, it won't be an official budget amendment or to find out what other funds might be available.
Right.
Well, how do we ask if it's not official?
You can ask whatever you like.
Right.
You may
We're
get
gonna
the
ask
same
you.
answer back from Mr. Mays. I
Oh, we
can't
asked Mr.
guarantee
Mays.
anything
Okay.
else.
Okay.
So we don't have to put this should we have it in the form of a motion, or you just ask
Yeah.
the question?
Okay, so I take it your wish is to be now, okay.
Ask and.
Yes,
that
but I
would-
mean, for instance, for this first time, even though it's not budgeted, are you wanting this for two?
Two, yes.
You want you want the whole thing, the two renderings, the two models, the
Right.
two bronze plaques, and you want it for next spring, if somehow the money can be made available for it, even though Michael told you, no. You
Right.
can ask,
can
we
ask.
will present it to him again.
also, if we were to find a sponsor, if that's procedural, if that's okay.
Right. And I'll certainly
Check on
pass
that.
on that you're
Okay.
wanting to know if a sponsor could make up the, the cost, or if, funding could come out of some other, existing portion of the budget.
Okay, so what do you guys want to do? You want to put it in the mailer in December? Choose the person that wins in February? The certificate will be made by March 24th. And it would then be presented at the April 28th meeting. Sounds like the good timeline to me.
I prefer choosing the awardee in March.
Oh, okay, you want another month to choose.
It's what we did last year.
Okay, so you want to just wait then before the motion's made before?
That is the motion.
Okay. Well, why don't you make a motion then?
I make a motion that the schedule for Historic Preservation Day includes December mailing the information, January and February applications coming in and review of those, and then in March, choosing the awardee, and then letting Mr. Winter know who the awardee is, pending money or pending a budget allocation towards that award, that component of the award. And then April, presenting to the to the City Council. And then May 9th, Historic Preservation Day.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. No, aye. Yeah, aye.
It's our wish list. So, so we'll just delay the talk of the coloring book for next meeting.
Good.
Gimme.
We're just having too much fun here. Okay. Well, anyway, I think the last meeting we had talked about, basically the theme of the event is that basically it's our 60th birthday of the city, which was officially a city in January 4th, 1960. And I was supposed to meet with the Chambers City Council this month, but they canceled their meeting, so we didn't have. But I've talked to Jill and some other members of the chamber, and they seem to be very enthusiastic about the idea of kind of like talking about what their buildings, or what we were in the 1960s, and then what we are as opposed, in comparison to what we are today. And some of the other feedback I've been getting is that people are saying, it'd be a great fun thing to be kind of like costumes, people like
Yeah, that is neat.
dress in 1960, which is kind of an interesting year. And just, the people that are participating in this would be dressed in, and kind of making a, kind of a downtown citywide event. I know you talked about maybe the Masons being involved in this thing.
Yeah, I talked to the
Or
mayor.
you talked to the Masons.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
going to get that to you, the phone
Oh,
number,
yeah,
so
okay.
you can call him.
But, the other things that we have, the lovely Daughters of the American Revolution and Reclamation there, I was kind of wanted to open up for public comment and see if they have any ideas or thoughts about Historic Preservation Day. No? You guys want to do anything?
We
Yeah.
were waiting to see what you were thinking.
Yeah.
We were thinking maybe something.
I'm sorry, please state your names again.
Susan Bell, of
DAR.
women's suffrage.
Right. Yeah, next year is also the anniversary of women's suffrage.
Well, I had an idea, it's just an idea. Since Ray always opens up the water treatment plant, the Fenton Park is right in front of the water treatment plant, and maybe you could do a rendering of Ida Fenton right there at the park. Teddy, okay, Teddy Fenton. right there at the park.
I'm sorry, a rendering? What do
Or,
you mean?
I mean, like a costume, reenactment of
Oh.
Teddy Fenton. That's kind of what I thought.
She was a pretty colorful character.
Does anybody have another idea?
I have another idea, and I have been trying to do this for 2 months, and nobody will pay any attention to it. So I'm going to try to be very specific about this, okay? Because I don't give a damn what you guys do. I am going to have a walking tour through
I
a
cared about it.
portion of the avenues, okay? And I'm going to talk about the people that live there, where they came from, what they did when they were here, where they went, what they did if they stayed. There's a tremendous number of stories down there, and I would love to have the DAR people participate in it, because I can think of 2 or 3 places where there were very important people in the history of this town that the DAR would be perfect for portraying those people. I think of Eliza Carter. I think of Jane Cook. I think of Terry Fenton. I think of Diane Green, who's still alive. I think of the things that happened on the avenues. There's people here that are probably old enough to know who Cheryl Canning is. Cheryl Canning got married on Avenue B, okay?
Carol Channing, do you mean?
Carol Chan, yeah.
Okay, so.
The first newspaper started in Boulder City started at 603 Avenue B by 2 women, both of them widows. They were sister-in-laws. There's a tremendous story that can be told on the avenues, okay? And I would love to have the DAR participate. But for some reason, I can't get that across that this is something I want to do for Historic Preservation Day.
Well, I think we pretty much decided that
I don't
you
think
were.
I haven't. All I have heard is everything that except the avenues, okay?
Okay. Well,
And
I think
I'm
we need to talk
disgusted
about
with
it then. I think we need to talk about
Okay,
it.
well, let's talk about it.
Okay.
All right.
So you're ready, right?
I have been spending 20 to 30 hours a week in the archives, in the
Okay.
basement of the Boulder Dam Hotel, researching people that lived on the avenues in the 30s and 40s, okay? And those are the people that built Boulder City.
What do
It
you
wasn't the
envision?
people that lived up on the hill that were the engineers and the architects. Those people all left.
What do you envision, Charlie? Like, do you
I
want?
envision walking around a couple of the streets. We can only do a couple because I think a half an hour is about all you can probably walk in that time of the year, and talk about who lived in this house and who lived in that house, what they did, where they come from, how they got here, where they went.
Would you be the docent, or would others?
I would hope that I could get someone other than me to be the docent, because I'm not very good at speaking in public.
Okay, so
Obviously, I don't get my ideas across very
so
well.
you
But we
envision.
have some people that are very good at that kind of thing,
Yeah.
okay? And
So
I
you
would be
envision
thinking
like
that would
meeting
be
at the, let's say at the Water and Power
We would meet
Building.
at some place, we'd have a little introductory thing about the housing. The other story that needs to be told about the avenues is how they've been neglected for 30-some years, because the city councils and the planning commissions have gone out of their way to make sure that nothing was preserved in the avenues, okay?
Would you want a presentation like at the Water and Treatment Building, the water?
No, I want a presentation, probably, I'm thinking in the parking lot, maybe across the street from Avenue B, and start there, go down Avenue B, go up Avenue C, and that's probably about all you're gonna do in half an hour.
Okay,
And maybe another, because Avenue F has got some great stories, Teddy Fenton,
yeah.
one.
Well, could you come next time with
You
your?
know, the people that made the meals for the TWA Airlines, they cooked the meals on Avenue F. And they carted them down to the airport. 2 women did that, okay? And you know who ironed their uniforms? Teddy Fenton. She lived 2 houses up from them, okay? There's stories like that that can be told that are, to me, the story of Boulder City, okay?
Okay, well, why don't you next time at the next meeting, bring your plan and then we'll just have it. We'll just
Good.
start, yeah. So, but bring it so we can know exactly what we're going to be doing, like timeline, so.
Well, okay.
Are you interested in
Now,
that?
wait a minute, I
Okay.
will do that if you bring your timeline so I can hear what your timeline is, okay?
Well, actually, we
And what you're
work
going to be
together on
doing and
it.
who you're going to talk about and the stores and the et cetera and et cetera and et cetera, okay?
Okay, it looks like you guys are interested in
We are
that. Okay,
interested, Mr. Hunt, and we would
Okay.
like to meet with you.
yeah.
Love it.
And Susan Bell.
You go to the podium.
Yeah, go so they can hear you.
Yeah, but I told you I support the idea.
Yeah.
We would
I
very,
supported you too.
I can't tell them what you.
Wait a minute, I brought you to the C Street house.
Well,
I
that's
spent 3
another
hours
thing.
with you yesterday.
That's another thing and Alan did do. Alan and I yesterday had a little walking tour through
All right,
640 Avenue
he's being
C.
emphatic, and that's
I'm
good.
sorry, excuse me, Chairman, could you bring the meeting to order?
Okay, get to it.
Well,
What do you do?
Well, no, let me
Yeah.
relate this though, because yesterday, Alan and I toured the house that's owned by the museum now on 640 Avenue C, and it's a rental house now, and the man that lives in there was gracious enough to let us wander around inside the house. It's almost pristine in terms of what it probably looked like in 1930. I mean, it's a shack, as Alan says,
Right.
and he's right. I mean, that's what it was. But yeah, it was great. It was a great tour.
Okay,
Mr. House, the Silver State chapter of the Daughters of American Revolution would love to meet with you, and we can arrange a meeting and decide on which houses and what information. We'll even go down into the archives with you because we enjoy anything with historic preservation.
Love it. I would love it, yes. Because I need
Okay.
all the help I can get, because there's a tremendous amount.
Yes.
There's a tremendous amount of information. I've got 175 names on my list, and I've only gone down Avenue B.
Oh, I think we'll have to limit that.
There's a
some.
lot of stories, so the idea is to pick and choose some of the more
Right.
interesting ones.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You probably have to choose a story between the laundry and the food. You
I
gotta
like
give
the
up one.
laundry. That's one
Okay.
of my favorite stories. Carol Channing's story.
No, it's great. No, I mean, I think, it's part of this. It's just, just,
Well, Susan told me one time, I've got to be more forceful.
oh, you're forced.
That's what she told me. She said, you got to.
So, Ray, do you have any ideas of what,
Well, I love your idea about dressing 60s, and I've always been hoping that we'll have a festival where people dress up in 1930s clothes, but I think 1960s is historic as well and appropriate,
I probably
considering
still
it's
have
the
clothes.
60th birthday. Of course, I'd like to see us continue with having the filtration plant open for viewing, and I think we should also have the hangar. We should have a presence at the hangar, not necessarily suggesting we have an event there, but definitely have it open so that people can go down and satisfy their curiosity about the hangar and get a look inside of it. And, maybe between now and then we can come up with some plan for an event there, but at least have it open for viewing.
yeah. I think so too, both of those. Also, I had another idea. I'm just talking out loud about my ideas. I was thinking about the museum, the Boulder Museum, and maybe having an anniversary cake. Maybe having them sponsor a cake and having it open, so people can go upstairs into the museum and look around. What do you guys think of that?
Cake
Birthday
is good.
cake. Okay.
One cake.
that's an interesting story too, because in 1960, the museum looked a lot different than it does today.
Yeah,
Created to be-
it's a lot there.
It was in pretty bad shape, and just to see the contrast, and,
Perhaps we can ask the museum to help come up with an exhibit from
Okay,
for the
I can
1960th
ask them.
anniversary.
you
And-
can, Alan? Okay.
I can follow up on that.
Nathaniel, are you going to volunteer to bake the cake?
No, I'm not volunteering to make the cake. I was just going to say, if you guys think it's worthwhile, I know that our management would be supportive of reopening the admin building if that helps. Or I know Alan had talked about perhaps doing something on the lawn And we would be happy to do that if we felt it could, if you guys felt it would be beneficial. We could work something out, either the building or the lawn.
You know, what I talked to Nathaniel about, because there's, I mean, even, wasn't even last night, it was Nathaniel and I were at, what event we were at?
The gentleman was speaking on Thursday, speaking.
Oh, at the museum, at the Thursday. And, you know, there was actually, the gentleman that was sitting next to me, who's been a resident of Boulder City for about a year now, kind of lectured us on the wastefulness of our lawns and how we're in a drought and things like that. But, you know, one of the things that I think we pride, and one of the things that happened with SHPO and the lawn itself, this is not the first time it's been an issue, and it's the idea of historic landscape and what it means, you know, as a cultural resource is these lawns are. And some of the first events in Boulder City, like the first 3 Thanksgiving were done in the lawn there, where everybody was cool and you kind of hang out. But you know, to actually celebrate the lawn, yeah. I mean, it's you know, it's one of those rare things. Yet you know, we realize we're in a drought, but you know, what are our values? And you know, I think Reclamation's effort to upgrade their irrigation system and make it as efficient as possible and still respect the integrity of that lawn going into Wilbur Park.
And we generally don't have public up on the lawn, but I know for Historic Preservation Day we would be willing to, and there is a flat section, you know, it goes up, then there, especially towards Nevada Way, there's a large flat section that I assume was a gathering place early on.
Right.
But that we could do some event there if it was.
I wonder if we could have lunch at the lawn, like we had box lunches one year.
Lunch in the lawn.
Yeah, and have a lunch at the lawn. Would that be okay?
I think we could work that out. Yeah.
Okay.
You know.
Would the Bureau be able to sponsor like a box lunch?
I could talk to my management.
Okay.
I can't commit to that.
All right. Okay. Perhaps.
But, you know,
I think if it's more than how much are we doing? $500. You're gonna have to ask in the 2021 budget. No,
well, what we could do. Well, what you could do is just decide how many you want to feed, and then that's it. I mean, first come, first serve.
Yeah, I can bring it up with my man.
Okay. All right.
You know, peanut butter sandwiches and water wiggles is all we want.
What they had in 1930, that's what we'll have.
For 1960, this is the anniversary. But 60th
Better,
anniversary.
a little more expensive.
Of the city, right? Okay. All
By
right.
the way,
great.
I want to say one more thing. I do want to, because now that I've got your attention, I don't intend and never did intend that this walking tour would preclude any other thing. I think definitely Bullock Field, definitely the filtration plant. Yeah. And I like Alan's idea about the businesses in town, what they were in 1960 and what they have become, because they've all gone through multiple hands. I think probably every single one of them. I don't think there's a building in town that is the same today as it was in 1960. And I think that's a great story. I think those stories can be told. What I had in mind is that probably like every 45 minutes to an hour, we'd have a little tour through and I would, or whoever we have lead it, so that people.
The walking tour, you mean?
Through the avenue. So over the 3 or 4 hour period of Historic Preservation Day, people could show up periodically, and we'd have a little tour, and then, you know.
We would just put you on a schedule.
Yeah, it'd just be exactly, and that wasn't the intention of them being that's the only thing that would happen on Historic Preservation Day.
Well, I think one of it is just try to create, you know, events that, you know, a lot of people would be, different kinds of people would be interested, you know. I mean, I think that one of the things that we're looking at is not only the idea that, you know, I mean, one of the things that, let's say you went to the museum event, and, you know, in some ways I was kind of disappointed because the demographics at that event wasn't a cross-section of who we are. And, you know, I'm hoping that what we create by Historic Preservation Days, we have a cross-section, you know, people that are interested in those details, people, and something for the kids, like say lunch on the lawn, barefoot. I mean, I don't know how many kids have walked barefoot on a lawn before, you know? And
I was even thinking in terms of your house tour, I went to a workshop one time that was sponsored by the SHPO, and they suggested having like lemonade and cookies out on the sidewalk. We could maybe have 2 points where we could do that, I would be willing
Water
to
station,
make sure that
lemonade,
happens.
Yeah, a little lemonade.
Yeah,
stand.
yeah.
Lemonade 5 cents.
Or, I mean, not to sell, but I mean, just to have it there, lemonade and cookies, you know, on the sidewalk. And then I was thinking about,
Love it, yeah, I mean, that'd be perfect.
okay. I was thinking too that maybe we could pick 4 or 5 businesses that would help. I mean, they would be the people that we would feature. And then maybe their businesses could dress up.
Well, that's kind of the idea, is to get these private businesses, especially with the chamber,
Yeah.
is to like dress up in their businesses, maybe do some research and get some historic photos, the building in 1960, and then there you are right now. Your event could be staged at one of these places, let's say, you know, the company store,
Sure.
Terrace, you know, I mean, it'd be a great place to
And
talk
a
about.
lot of those businesses, by the way, were either started or run or manned by people that lived on the avenues,
Well-
and there's that connection between them.
For example, her thing, it's the company store, which is the Six Company store,
Yeah.
could definitely be addressing lifestyle of the 6 companies. And then
Yeah.
your tour could be a perfect adjunct to, okay, now we have all these things we're talking about, all
Exactly,
these things.
and that's what I'd
Let's go
like to
take a
see,
tour.
yeah,
Right.
exactly, yeah.
See?
There is that
We got your whole
connection.
program done.
There is a connection between the avenues and the businesses. They're the same story. yeah.
Right, and like we've talked before, it's the people, you know, that stayed there. I mean, the Avenue buildings were meant to be torn down, but those are the people that stayed and built Boulder City. The reclamation people, the 6 companies people, they went to the
They
next
left.
project.
They left.
And the people that stayed in the avenues built this town.
Where do you intend to show the images of the buildings?
I was thinking in front of each
At
individual building.
at the outside?
Yeah,
Okay.
outside of
Out of the businesses, you mean?
the businesses
okay.
themselves.
Which ones did you have in mind?
Well, we haven't
You
got
haven't done, you haven't done that
Put
yet.
on the list, Ellen, is the Manx, M-A-N-I-X, the Manx and Vaughn.
all the Mexico.
Your list.
But, you know, we have like, you know, like the Dillinger, I mean.
Oh, yeah, the old bank.
And the theater and all of those, you know, the big monuments in town. But even, you know, the water, the LA Water and Power, you know, we can we'll start a list
Okay,
of the things.
yeah.
But like
Maybe
I
we
said-
could expand the discussion next
Well,
month.
I should have a meeting with the
Chamber?
chamber board,
Okay.
which is, I'm on the agenda of the chamber board.
Okay, good.
Evans.
2 comments. Number 1, keep in mind who's going to be doing the work. And if you need help, you know, you need to be finding that. And Alan, if you're talking to the chamber, great. Sounds like the DAR is going to be meeting with Charlie. I would suggest that if you want to get the museum involved, maybe somebody reach out to them and invite them to
Right.
come to the next meeting and get them involved earlier on. That
Right.
might be more helpful, you know. for
I
both
met with
parties.
Roger, by the way, Schoof, is that how you say his last name? Yeah, Schoaf, and he asked what he could do, the museum did, so, yeah, I, like I said, I'm in the basement every day.
So if you look at the National Register form, page 27 of 35 and 36, or 27 and 28, I should say, is a list of the businesses that contribute to the historic district that were built post 1941. So, the 76 gas station.
Actually, today, I just came across a document in the basement that listed all of the recommendations for the types of businesses that would be allowed. This was back in 1931, and that would be allowed in the city. You know, you could have one florist shop, you could have one butcher shop, you could have, because the 6 company stores had everything, so to have competition, they would have, and there was a list of them that was put together by the Bureau of Reclamation that said, here you can have one of these, 2 of these kind of thing. So all of that stuff is interesting, and it's all there. It's buried deep.
Okay, so for our homework next week, if we could identify specific buildings, especially if people could bring to the committee the specific buildings and maybe some of the relationships that we could
All right.
So we
Four of them, yeah.
we can get a map going, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Evans.
yeah, Evans.
Did you, Evans was a dress shop?
Yeah.
If possible, could I ask if you're treating this as homework, then make your notes at home and then send me an email. It'd be a lot more helpful and more efficient for the committee if I could then add those comments to the packet rather than
Having people open.
so much stream of consciousness. If you can focus it into at least getting a start on some written comments next month that I can include in the packet. You're still welcome to discuss it as much as you like, but it might help focus you.
Okay.
So can I ask a question? You're looking for businesses that represent or have been that were in existence in 1960?
It's kind of like, well, and
If
this,
you're going back to 1930s, and the company store, by the way, wasn't a commercial business, but at the time, that was a federal, employee benefit.
yeah. Well, no, for the company store, it would really be at the night time. The company store in 1960 was a men's store, which is fine.
Okay. Which company store are you talking about? The one that?
Tara's company store.
Yeah, Tara's company store was
company
not
store
the
was-
company
Right,
store.
it was a men's, which is a fine part of the story, in the sense that it was a men's store, and now today she is repurposed as a
Right, it was a gift shop.
As a gift shop.
So even though it's no longer a men's store, we're looking at buildings that were in existence,
Were
but they have
existing.
been adapted or
right, and
changed
repurposed
since then.
I mean, I think that's part of the message that we want to send out there. It's like, these things have new lives and repurposes, and what we think of them today are totally different than what they started as, and that's how we recycle our building. We keep on reusing our buildings, because people find new uses for them,
And in terms of what, just again to clarify, I'm using the 1940 census as a basis for a database. And so when I find information out about businesses, they may be pre or post, because I go to Ancestry.com and I go to the archives, I go to Boulder City News. So it's so it's a broad range of anywhere from the 30s through the 70s or 80s, so it's just catch as catch can as far as as far as what I find.
Okay, and just a note for Susan, then, we should get you our comments about 2 weeks before the meeting, right?
Preferably, yes.
How many
Yeah.
businesses we're not looking at 10.
Right, I think we should limit it
Can we
to,
limit it to,
Yeah.
5? 3 to 5?
Well, let's see how it looks. I mean, I think that I don't think it has to be like a big, it could just be, people could just walk, part of a walking tour.
like
things
this
that are-
But
identify
so are you going to do a walking tour map with all of the businesses?
Well, I think it's
or-
kind of the idea is kind of like, who's part of this thing. That's why I think there is some sponsorships availability over here,
But you're going to have to lead those. So on Historic Preservation Day, you're going to have to lead people to go to those businesses, or they're going to have a map.
or a map, probably some kind of map.
So somebody's going to have to draft that map and get the history, and so that's why I was trying to narrow it down to, you could definitely do a whole map of everything, but as far as identifying the history of each building, I don't know, takes a little time.
Yeah. Well, I think all you have to do is what they were in 1960 and what they are today.
Oh, okay.
I I think you have to have an in-depth, I don't think it has to be quite as involved as the Browder building and that, we have to research it, but I think it's part of it is like, I don't think people, realize how much the town has changed since 1960. We kind of imagined it's always been here and it's always been this, but it's changed and it's,
I think that's really interesting.
Well, it was
It's
a
gonna be very
very,
educational.
it was very poor. I mean, the city was not great shape at that point. We're trying to find our identity, kind of like what we're doing today.
We're still trying
We're still finding our identity, Yeah.
Well, Blair, we could maybe do a comprehensive map, but then maybe just feature 3 to 5 where they could walk in or something.
Sure, who's going to make those maps?
I don't know yet. We're talking about it, but I'm not sure. You know, Roger did it for us last time, but I don't know if he wants to do it again, you know, last year. So,
He might.
he might,
He was
yeah.
asking what he could do.
Really? He was? Okay. Okay, possible, Roger.
Well, so we're talking about, you know, between Gary and Roger, maybe something could be,
Gary,
well, kind of more of a caricature map than
tell me his
a
last name, Gary.
winter.
Winters.
Oh, he's gone, okay. But
Yes, that's an
okay, Gary Winter, all right. Okay. Maybe he would donate his time in there. Okay, we're just thinking out loud.
Okay, any other thoughts for now before we make Susan go crazy? Any other thoughts for Historic Preservation Day? We can continue our discussion. Next item. For positive action, discussion update on the status of properties in the historic district.
Michael wanted me to point out that on the monthly report page, that there were some updates regarding the city projects down there.
They're still working on the idea of, I noticed in the city council meeting, they still haven't decided what they're gonna do with landscaping, right, around the the LA Water and Power Building.
I think what I reported last month was that they were still looking into the plants. I know they didn't want very large plantings. Apparently that was kind of used as hiding places by people who shouldn't be hiding behind big bushes. So they know that they're not going to use terribly large ones, but
Right.
we can ask again if they've made those decisions yet.
I know there's some concern, I know it was brought up in the city council meeting last night about the idea of putting hollyhocks
That sounds nice.
around the building, and I know there's several people have come and talked about that to the, I don't know how the committee feels about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. They do well in this climate. And it's our city flower.
It's a city farm.
Yeah, it is.
So I just wanted to say for the record, today I attended the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2021 public presentation regarding the capital improvement plan, and there's a number of projects on there that includes some rehab and work on historic buildings within the historic district. For instance, there's the City Hall improvements, $1 million plus is planned for that, along with some other structures. But I believe that's on hold. Those types of projects are on hold because we're still waiting on the Stantec project. So that's one of my questions tonight is what is the latest on receiving that report?
I'm sure Michael will be able to respond next month about that. I'll make it a note so that he can, and it might be something he can, if he's got a ready answer that he can email you about, but I'll pass that on to him.
And so another couple of things that came up in today's meeting was there's a project planned for converting the streetlights to LED. And I brought up the idea that there needs to be some sensitivity to that regarding the street lamps, the historic street lamps that are here in town, and to make sure that they're not installing super bright, obnoxious, non-historic lighting within those acorn-style lamps that are there. I also brought up trying to incorporate international night sky standards, but we'll see how that goes. The other was interesting.
Is that compatible with LEDs?
Yes, it can be. The information I received from a member of the staff, the electrician, one of the electricians, was that night sky standards can be too expensive. But the other thing that I was a little concerned about, which wasn't, I mean, it was a short presentation, was the Safe Nest / Police Department storage building. They're planning to demolish it, and that's located at 525 Avenue G. That is listed on the National Register. It's contributing. It's considered a contributing building, at least as of that National Register nomination writing.
Where's that building?
525 Avenue G. And in the National Register form, it's property number 563.
Is that the one that's,
Wait, if that's the property, we can check into that. I believe the property is in the district, but that is not the original building.
That's the part I don't know, and that's one of the reasons that I
No,
asked.
it's the building behind the court building, and that, I think there used to be originally an apartment building or something there. I'm sure the photo's in there, but the building there that's now there behind the municipal court building was built by the New Life Church people when they tore down the old Catholic church and put up the, what is now the Smith Center building, because that was like kind of their bookstore, I believe. So I'm pretty certain that building is newer, even though the property's in the district, but we could look into that.
It's a Safe Net, but is that the Safe Nest
Yeah,
building? Okay.
yeah, they occupy half of it, and the other half, I believe, is used for police archive storage. We used to store a lot of building plans, and just archives were in there before we moved them over to the LA Water and Power building.
The address that they gave, though, in the capital improvement plan was 525 Avenue G.
Right,
And that's here in the National Register. So my point is that these are structures that the city is planning on working on, and we're not getting that information in advance or to consider, which I think, and this is what I recommended, that that should be added to our packet. Even though it's out in 2021, now is an opportunity for us to weigh in and offer some advice or assistance as needed. So,
right, we're the only ones that can flag this thing. I mean, I think especially, the lesson from Alan's, our former chairman here. I mean, one of the things is the tragedies that he saw was in City Hall. He says the thing that changed the looks of City Hall so much is when they changed out the windows to the aluminum case windows. And the big example of that is the difference between City Hall here and Reclamation, who saved their windows out there on the hill. And it's more expensive. I mean, there's a lot of choices that have to be made, but at least there's some input. Okay.
I have a question, I guess, and I guess this is the only time to ask it, and I'll ask it of you, Susan, and maybe this isn't appropriate, but I drove down Arizona Street today, and I noticed that the site of the old hospital building has had considerable amount of earthwork done. And talking to one of the workers there, they were just clearing it off. But it occurred to me, I wonder if an historic building is demolished within the boundaries of the historic district, if a historic building is demolished and then someone decides to build another building there, does that new building have to come before the Historic Preservation Committee?
Not the way your guidelines are written now. Your guidelines which the committee created, only address existing historic buildings. They do not address new construction.
Okay.
So that will be, I mean, I know one of the items that Michael's going to bring up at next month's meeting, since the City Council discussed your priorities last night, that'll come back next month for discussion. And that's one of those things, you could put on your wish list. But Michael will be discussing that with you next month to get more input, because obviously you've got a lot of things on your wish list, and we presently have a lack of resources, in order to follow through on them. But certainly updating the guidelines, I believe, was already on the list. And, it would make sense that the committee would want guidelines or some review procedure for new construction, so, but we can't just.
No, I
Yeah,
understand, and
we-
thank
we
you, that
can't-
was my
Yeah,
question.
we
I
can't do
thought-
it
yeah,
without,
exactly, yeah,
a
yeah.
code or
Right,
something
right.
adopted that authorizes.
Yeah, so that's
us to do
something that needs
that.
to be addressed, I think, yeah.
What about the, is it a Cherry, that house on Cherry and Railroad? That new construction that Alan Stromberg designed that kind of like went across the lot with they had two garages and they had a, I remember that new home was brought before the committee.
That was because the garage was being torn down.
Because the garage was torn down?
Well, it was
Right.
going to be torn down.
Right.
And it was an accessory building, so it might have been brought to you for a courtesy review because
Right.
removing, the only accessory buildings for demolition that have to come to the committee are the ones, the historic ones with the tile roofs at the back of I believe Birch and Cherry Streets or whatever.
Right.
So I think that came to you as a courtesy review because a garage was being removed, not because, if it had been a vacant lot and they were just putting a house there, no, that, there's nothing in the code or your guidelines that forces a new residential building to come to you. The commercial guidelines were, the way the committee adopted those, they say if a new commercial building is proposed, it does come to the committee. But your residential guidelines, which the committee created, only apply to the existing residential homes, not to any new construction.
Well, and the other thing I learned is that the guidelines don't include all of the residential buildings that are within the historic district.
No, not at all.
Because
And-
555 Avenue G, which is the one that they talked about last night, there's no guidelines for 555 Avenue G.
That's correct. And that, again, the guidelines, whatever you want to propose, that's your committee's work. I mean, the guidelines that we have now are largely the product of former member Susan McIntyre. She's the one who did the research, from the 1983 nomination and drafted all the guidelines and pushed them forward through the committee. And, then we had workshops with affected residents. And I more than once went back to the committee after they did their series of guidelines and mentioned, okay, there's numerous homes and other categories of buildings you do not have guidelines for at all. You don't have guidelines for churches or other institutional buildings, the Masonic Lodge or anything else.
We don't have guidelines for little alleyways either. I discovered that last night.
Yeah.
They aren't mentioned
yeah.
in Janus at all. That's
Yeah,
it,
you have to keep in mind that the staff you have are not historic preservation professionals, so you folks are driving the bus in that regard, but that means you have to do the work.
Well, and I appreciate that, Susan, and that's why I ask, because I think that we need to put that on our list of things that need to be addressed is, we need to look at these guidelines and see if we need to change them or add to them or fix them or whatever.
So that was one of the recommendations that we brought before the city council, is not just that we would look at those,
Right, exactly.
revisit those guidelines, but those guidelines probably require a lot more of an update based on the update that we're planning for the National Register form, which includes that we've talked about cultural landscapes,
Well, that's another, yes, that's a.
which includes roads, sidewalks, alleys,
et cetera.
that kind of thing. And I think I don't know if you heard this at the city council meeting, but it sounded as if Kieran and the mayor wanted us to take on those duties, and I don't think we can. I think we're going to need some professional help to do that, and that was in our recommendations that the city council approved just yesterday.
Right.
So it's
Right,
up to
I had
us to
that-
completely,
I'm glad you said
to encourage them to
I think
contract out some of those
we need to keep pushing
people.
them because we need that done quickly. I mean, that should be right at the top of the list of things that need to be done, is we need to hire a professional to do some of these things.
Those were in the recommendations.
Right, and I think the mayor's statement was a little bit less clear. And he sounded like we're going to do all the work, and
Right, not exactly, yeah.
which
I wouldn't mind writing the guidelines.
Okay, are there any other comments?
Actually, I do have a couple updates that Michael wanted me to pass on to you. He did talk to Jim Bertolini, well, not his replacement. He talked to Rebecca up at the SHPO's office, and she said, no, they don't have a replacement for Jim Bertolini yet. However, that they are committed to being able to replace that position and hopefully be able to provide some training to us before the end of the year regarding the CLG requirements and the Secretary of the Interior standards. And then he also wanted me to mention to you that the SHPO has announced the second round of grant applications for this year relative to the Certified Local Government Program, and that staff plans to submit an application by the October 31st deadline to update the 1983 nomination, the survey of the city's historic district. It's estimated that the survey update will cost about $33,500, of which the SHPO could reimburse 60% or just under $20,000. And so the department has budgeted the balance he says we budgeted $30,000 for this current fiscal year. So hopefully we'll be able to be successful in getting a grant from the SHPO under the CLG program for that. But he just wanted to let you know he is following through with that application.
That's great.
What happened to Jim Bertolini?
Oh, sorry, you might not have been at a meeting. I thought it was mentioned a few months ago. He left. He moved to, I think, Colorado.
He took another historic preservation position.
Yeah, he moved to, I don't recall if it's another SHPO office, but he's, I believe, he's originally from maybe Fort Collins or one of those other communities in Colorado, and he moved back to that area, so, yeah. So no, we were very sorry, we were bummed when we got that note a few months ago, but I thought I had mentioned that to the committee back then, but you had missed a couple meetings, so it might have come up somehow in passing then.
Well, next meeting, just a comment, I think we'll get more into this, what our responsibility, I think that's one of the things that Michael wants to talk about, is what is our responsibility, make that very clear. We're not staff, and then we can make suggestions, but a lot of this legwork is and that's why I supported your proposal, because you specifically said we need outside help. We need some professionals, and we the concerned citizens, which is appropriate, but we're not except for yourself. Okay. With that, is there any other thing from the committee? Any comments from the committee? Oh, and then we open up the last public comment.
Good evening, everybody. Huh? I'll state your name. I had to turn the mic on.
Okay. Thanks, Molly. Hey, good evening, everyone. Mary Shope, live here in Boulder City. Thank you. The concern I have, or the question I have, are lighting. Street lighting, and that specifically in the avenues, in the alleys. And right now, I did a quick survey. Some alleys have lighting everywhere, and I understand some of the residents can request it. Not sure why some alleys have more lighting than downtown. Some alleys have none. And if you walk the avenues, like one of the members, you'll understand at nighttime, most of the bedrooms are off the back. So you have these LED lights or non-LED lights, obnoxious lights in your bedroom windows. So I think that might be something you might want to tackle. Recommend, consider. I mean, it's not only the front part that you can see, but the alleys are critical with the lighting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other further public comment? Oh, we're popular today.
So this is me as a citizen, not reclamation. Can turn it up, you said?
Yeah, I folded it down.
Straighten it up. There you go.
Is that better? Okay. I do think the award with the rendering is a really good idea, and particularly saving the renderings so that you could do something with them as a committee. I think that captures history really well, and I think there's plenty of ways you could come up with $500.
Right.
So I would move forward with that.
Thank you. Any other further public comment? Okay, with that, I call this meeting adjourned before 9 o'clock.